We have with us a very interesting next topic on technology and entrepreneurship and grassroots Atmanirbhar, for which I'll introduce our moderator, Anurag Goel ji. If you can switch on your video, and Sridhar ji, if you can switch on your video, please. Anurag ji is the co-founder and executive chairman of Cactus Communications, a global scientific communications company using cutting-edge technology to support research and innovation. He was formerly working with McKinsey before becoming an entrepreneur. He is also a founding trustee at the Rashtram School of Public Leadership. Anurag ji, I request you to start the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Sahil, and pleasure to be here. I'd like to introduce Sridhar. Sridhar, I can see you're online. We can't see your video yet, but yeah, great. We can see you now. So it's a lot of joy I introduce Sridhar. Sridhar is the founder and CEO of Zoho. Sridhar has a PhD in electrical engineering from Princeton University, and he started his career at Qualcomm in 1994. His journey from a small town in Thanjavur, Tamil Nadu, to the US and back to India now is a rather inspiring one. He was born to a family of farmers. He always had this vision of bringing Silicon Valley back to his village. And in October 2019, which is pre-COVID actually, he moved to Tenkasi, making the big move to a small town and, validating his vision that we don't have to be in urban hubs to develop world-class products. And we're seeing many more of that happening now with COVID. But Sridhar made this move even before COVID happened, and Sridhar, welcome. Thank you for being here. So Sridhar, I just thought we could start. I've been reading. There's a lot of press about Zoho's experience of decentralized teams in village clusters, and if you can talk about what compelled you to do this. This was before Atmanirbhar also. What compelled you to do this, and how successful overall has it been?
Yeah, we've had our rural development center for about 10 years now. It's at least 10 years now, and we started small and in Tenkasi, and now that has grown to about 450 to 500 people. So it is actually substantial growth in the last 10 years, and from a pretty zero start. And we had to figure out how to make this work. And that's the critical thing is skill development, of course. I mean, you have to develop, invest in skill development. And the reason why we undertook that is I always felt, even from this is not just altruistic motive, it is also fundamentally, we have to shift our thinking, because I felt that the way that we are concentrating all the jobs in urban areas is doing a disservice to the urban areas themselves. The cities have become more and more overcrowded and unlivable, and the infrastructure problem, all of that. And I did an analysis myself that the cost of infrastructure per person goes up non-linearly. It goes up higher and higher when the population density grows. That means that in a small town, you don't need a lot of infrastructure per capita, but in a gigantic city, you have to invest. So, and I figured that a lot of the extra GDP is going towards infrastructure, transportation, and of course the real estate costs. And so in reality, the worker is not better off in a big city often. Okay. And so I felt maybe there's why should we create those jobs in a big city where our employees are not actually getting the benefit? Maybe we pay the same thing in a rural area, they get a better deal, right? Overall, they can, and that was actually part of the calculation also, that a lot of it is going to, the GDP is going away to infrastructure and to the real estate, and it's not accruing to the employees. So that was also a reason. So these are together motivated me to try.
Okay, thank you, Sridhar. And maybe it might help also for the audience. I'm sure most have heard of Zoho, but if you can just talk about Zoho a little bit, just to give context, because that might help people understand, how incredible it is what you've done.
So we are a cloud software company, and we actually have a suite of products. We call ourselves the operating system for business. This is the really the largest software product company out of India. India has been known for software IT services and the products we have been behind, and now Zoho is helping to catch up and be a leader in that area. And we have been at it for 25 years now. We have about 8,000 employees, of which about 500 are rural, which is set to rise sharply in the next year, because about the next year we are going to shift about 2,000 to 3,000 people rural. This pandemic is helping us because a lot of employees have requested that move already. They've already gone to their hometowns. They want rural centers now. So that's what we are doing.
And Sridhar is being very modest. So Sridhar is the original product company out of India. I mean, the first successful product company that that scaled up in a very large way, 8,000 employees, and 500 of which are already in villages. And you're saying maybe that can go up to 2,000 in a year's time.
That is going to go up sharply the next year. Yeah.
Right. Now, one of the constant or sometimes feedback we get, as I understand, a lot of your customers are also international, and there has always been this maybe fact or fiction that India in the rural areas isn't so well educated. And so if I am a high-tech company delivering software and products for a global community, if I need the talent, I can only get the talent in big cities. And if I move to a village, it will maybe make the quality of my product worse, or I won't be able to scale up. So how how did you kind of maybe prove this wrong, or what? How are you brave enough, I guess, to maybe try to test this? Yes.
But that's actually, if you look at any of the companies today in Chennai or Bangalore, or for that matter, any of the Indian engineers in the US, a lot of them would have come from smaller towns, rural areas. In fact, if you look at even a big company like Microsoft and take all the Indian engineers, look at their place of origin, they would not be often from a big city. Whether there's a proportion of them from big cities, but there's also a substantial contingent that were born and brought up or went to school, college in smaller towns. And it's true in, throughout the world, and it's definitely true in Bangalore, it's true in Chennai. In fact, that was the migration problem I talked about, where we are, in Zoho context itself, over 80%, maybe close to 90% of our employees did not come from Chennai, even though our big office was in Chennai. Our recruitment was happening in all the rural areas, and we are bringing them into Chennai.
Okay.
And this has always been true. So that and the demographics also, right? Cities don't produce as many kids as the rural areas do. So there's a big gap there too.
True. Okay. No, thank you. I have this question here around alternative economic models for distributed wealth. Have you tried, experimented with any of this at Zoho? Any thoughts on that?
Alternative models for? You mean
for distributed wealth.
Okay. Yeah. So it basically, this comes down to, I look at wealth as different from financial. Actually, before me, Mr. Gurumurthy talked about this whole financialization, all of that, and I'm coming after him, and he's my mentor, and he's a philosopher that I really look up to. And so the point he made about India being less financialized, and we actually have to look at wealth much more holistically, much more consistent with the market. What is wealth? And to me, wealth is all of the capabilities to be self-reliant, to be resilient to adversity. All of those factors go into wealth, not just how many zeros in some bank balance, right? That's not really wealth. Wealth also is a concept of not only an individual, but a community. Can this community rely on its own resources? Can it solve its own problems? Is it resilient to adversity? If crops fail or something bad happens, can we tackle that? Those are the kinds of things that connote wealth and capital to me. So in that sense, the only true wealth is distributed. Because heavily concentrated wealth, I mean, do this thought experiment where all the wealth in the world is owned by one person, which definitely, the current American economic system is trying to do this, right? And we might see Jeff Bezos go to $1 trillion or $2 trillion state. And But meanwhile, the streets are burning. While you have some of the most explosion in wealth of the top 1%, you're also seeing the streets burning. And that is not, to me, wealth at all. When your streets are burning, you cannot be wealthy. It doesn't matter how many zeros you have in your name. So the only truly, true wealth to me is distributed wealth, where communities are self-reliant, strong, and resilient, and with capability to take care of their own needs. And that means that also capability to take part in exchange. So the real economics is about exchange of our goods for somebody else's goods. But this has to be symmetrical. It means that what we supply must have some symmetry with what we obtain. If we sell only rice and we buy smartphones, that's not a very resilient system, because the rice prices crash and we are screwed. So that is why it's very important that we need a symmetry in this. And communities that are resilient and strong like that have peace, harmony internally too. So, and that is wealth to me. So that is how I see wealth. Yeah. And to me, part of my role as a capital allocator, I look at myself as allocating capital to new activities, is to promote that type of resilience, to promote that type of distributed resilience. That is how I see my role.
Okay. It's very, very, very refreshing. Have you found people in your journey who support you? Like, or do you feel often like a lone crusader when you're doing this? Because it's a very refreshing view from a successful entrepreneur who's,
For a long period, we were. I never bothered about that question. Part of it is because I tend to be a kind of seeker of solitude. I generally go to the forest, go to the mountains myself, and just sit there alone. So that's my natural tendency. So I never worried about are other people going to take these ideas, because I'm grounded more in a reality of our actual inner experience. Right, that is where I see it. And the concepts I talked about, resilience and wealth, it definitely resonates. Now it's clear that has to be true. What is the point in one person owning everything and the streets are burning? It doesn't make any sense, right? Even for the person who owns everything, when the streets are burning, he doesn't own anything. Right?
Yeah,
he cannot get out. Right?
Yeah.
So that is the problem, and that problem is not being, sufficiently appreciated. And we have had a system where there is a very lot of short-term optimization games going on. Like, how do I quickly do this, quickly exit, all of that. And I am, I'm a sort of a slow culture person in this. It has to seep in. So that's why I always I detach myself from anything. I don't actually feel that this is mine. Nobody gets to take it with us. Right?
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, the truth is, about 2 months ago, my grandmother, 99-year-old, she passed away, almost a century.
Okay.
And she was in the village, and I've had a long visiting with her, right? And it was, I realized at that point, for all this, during the ceremonies, all that I was thinking, ultimately this is where we are all heading. I am heading there. And absolutely, there is nobody avoids this, right?
Right.
And she never knew, actually, she never really thought of me as a rich grandson or anything. She always thought of me only as a grandson.
Right.
That's all mattered to her.
Right.
Nothing mattered to her. Nothing else mattered to her.
Right.
So that is the reality. And so that's how I didn't compare myself with anybody else. I just thought that let's just do what I think is right.
Okay. Very interesting. I think two thoughts come out from what you just said. One is you've probably heard of Bhutan and their concept of GNP, GNH, Gross National Happiness. And it seems to me, you're kind of trying to, in your ecosystem, trying to optimize for that, right? It's just not material wealth.
And I like this. I mean, this doesn't mean, even a Bhutan, and of course India, all of them. We want our smartphones. I'm talking to you from a smartphone right now. There is a lot of advanced technologies embedded in it, and we want those. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to communicate this way. And we want our motorcycles or bullet trains, and we want our fighter jets to protect the country. And that means, and we want our MRI scans and all of that when we are sick and we want to take a scan. That means that, to me, happiness also means that our ability to satisfy our own needs or provide equal value in exchange for them.
Okay.
Like if you want to buy MRI machines, maybe we have some smartphones to sell, something like that. So we want to have that equal value, and that itself is fulfilling purposeful life when people who have the brains, people who have the capabilities are realizing their potential by building all these things. Because it's very satisfying. You know, a lot of work, there is a karma yoga, right? That work itself brings you satisfaction, figuring out complicated things, whether it's complicated mathematical problems, software problems, mechanical engineering problems, all of those. So it's very important that we keep that balance in mind. To me, happiness does not mean just, you know, and there is a yogic form where I need nothing at all. I absolutely not wanting anything. But that lot of people want things. We want our bullet trains, right? I want to get to Mumbai in 3 hours or 4 hours someday.
Right.
Well, then we better have figure that out. Sort of thing. We better figure that out.
Right. Okay. Okay. And the other thing you touched upon is you are a slow culture, slow builder of things, right? So that you get it right. And the other thing that you've talked, you know, in some of the press about is VC money and private equity money, and connecting that to say Atmanirbhar Bharat. And do you think, if you look at Zoho's history, or even now, forget history, right? If you were to, and Zoho probably doesn't need the money, but if Zoho were to take in capital, is there merit in taking that capital so that you can provide for greater jobs, scale up faster? Or do you think there is a cost?
There is a, I'll tell you that you probably could scale up faster, but the way they scale up faster is also interesting. Right? The push is whenever a product fit is achieved, you scale up marketing and sales extraordinarily fast. You become a very sales and marketing dominated organization. Actually, that's what a lot of these companies become. And that actually has a longer term cost in itself, because the balance with engineering and innovation gets lost often when you become dominated by the sales pressure alone. That's been observed in so many tech companies, so it's not even all that controversial to say this. And the second problem within the Indian context is so many of our problems cannot be solved overnight. See, Silicon Valley is a unique place where you spend the money and get the talent from anywhere in the world to do that. At least that has been true until now. I don't know if it continues to be true in the next 10 years, but it has been true for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And that is pretty much the only place in the world where that is true, where you can actually, if you want a top engineer from Mumbai or from Estonia or from Japan or from Turkey or anywhere, that engineer will magically materialize in Silicon Valley. That is not true anywhere else in the world. That's not true in Chennai, that's not true in Bangalore, anywhere else. Which means that expectation that you can somehow build these things hyper fast is actually not really true. And now you look at the latest example, even the Chinese, for example, take Huawei, the company that is. I've been following them for 22 years because we have actually been done business with them in the past, long time ago. They were a tiny company then. They were a company with about 150 million revenue, I remember, when we were long time ago when we were dealing with them. And this is a company now 100+ billion revenue. It's a 1,000-fold scaling. But this company was also born in 1990. In the first 15, 20 years of their life, they completely lost to Cisco. And the next 10 years, now they've completely overtaken Cisco. And this is not comprehensible to a VC or private equity person. How could this happen? Where you lose all of the initial years and then later you win. How is it possible? It's possible because they had a particular form of culture, and that comes from the commonality that I talked about. There is a patient engineering culture they built. They had to have built it. That's the only way they have all these products. So that is the instance. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you repeat it?
I'm sorry, Sridhar, I was on mute actually.
Hello?
No, thank you very much for that. Recently, Zoho won the Atmanirbhar App award. Can you talk about that a little bit? What was that for?
I'm very happy with this. Even this government is making this push to sort of evaluate, judge companies in India and create the competitive pressure inside. This is actually very important. In fact, I myself have advocated the government should play the role of I would call a tough headmaster, school headmaster, a tough school principal kind of thing, where you are pushing the children to excel. And that is actually very good in technology industry, where the government has to ask us, why is your email even faster? Why don't you scale up this faster? Why don't you build this operating system? All of those kinds of things, the technology aware this thing has to do, and conduct these fair competition where, open competition where they evaluate companies. These things actually spur the innovative DNA. In other words, we are doing it in the educational sector. I actually don't believe that in education there should be so much competition for kids. Competition should be left to industry, not for children. We should be competing in the marketplace, and that is much more real world relevance, because children, we in India push the children model. Right. Actually, I push the industry model.
Okay. And any since we are in Atmanirbhar, any thoughts you have on this initiative by the Prime Minister? Any thing you can share with the audience?
I wholeheartedly, I think this is the right time to do it. We are in both timing wise. We can see all the trends globally. That and for a long time I've been advocating these, where India has to have the know-how in critical industries for our size of our population, size of our talent pool, because it's two sides of the same coin. I come to rural areas, I see so many graduates without jobs, and then you go what they buy. We buy a rice planter or even a nail clipper, to all of these things made in South Korea or made in Japan. We need those jobs to create them here, and we have unemployed people sitting here. So that is very critical. When you have unemployment, you have to create industry. And countries with, they have capital surplus, they running it now. Now India should be running, employment generating thing now, program. So this Atmanirbhar is very, very vital now. It's vital in India. I wholeheartedly support it.
Okay. And can you, there's a Zoho University, an apprenticeship-based education that you have as an initiative. It would be interesting to hear thoughts on that. In addition to that, generally your views on education, in terms of what we can do in India to change maybe how we educate and teach. But maybe you can start with Zoho a little bit, what you do there, and then maybe broaden it out to India.
I have a lot of our education initiative come from this observation that the best education really happens on the job, that the skills get developed, and so I call it contextual learning, on the job learning, and that is sorely lacking particularly in engineering type of technical fields. Simply studying for some exam doesn't actually build the know-how. And two reasons. One, well, you tend to forget the material quickly. In whatever you study for an exam, 6 months later, 1 year later, you won't remember it. That's one. Two, even that very nature of I have to study for an exam creates a perverse incentive system to game the system. I mean, I remember my own time as a student. My priority at that time was, well, this damn exam is there tomorrow or next week, and I have to figure out how to get the right grade. The learning was the last priority. The thing is, what is going to come on the test? How do we figure that out? Right. All of us did that.
Right.
And that creates a perverse incentive, right? It's not really healthy. Everybody knows this, but we are stuck kind of wringing our hands what to do about this. And I figured, the employer is well suited to solve the problem, because we need a workforce that is skilled and capable. So I said, let's invest in it. We will create our own system to invest, and we won't have exams, but we'll import the actual know-how, and they have to work on real problems and create. So it's a series of hands-on assignments.
Okay.
We also offer some theoretical education on the side, but they are not tortured with exams. Okay. Some students take to theory, some students don't really care for theory that much.
Right.
I'll tell this goes back to even school. I actually did some tutoring for kids in this village, and what I noticed, a lot of the young children, boys in particular, have very strong aversion to book learning, books. They don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, if you tell them you want to study,
right,
they're like, tell them, let's play with this. Let's conduct this experiment.
correct.
I conducted some chemistry experiments.
Right.
I conducted physics things. Their eyes light up. Suddenly they realize there's a world of learning that has nothing to do with the books alone. And then the books complement it later, right?
Right.
And in fact, a lot of kids actually we had to close it down for the COVID right now because the COVID arrived nearby here. But we actually the biggest request from some of the children, older children, is teach us how to fix motorcycles, how to take it apart, how to fix it, all of those. We want to learn those things. Teach us how to create electrical motors. Actually, one of the boys has requested, I want to learn how to build the motor.
Wow.
So I've told them, yes, we will teach you. This is going to come. So these are the things that contextual learning.
So this contextual learning so if I want to do that at Zoho, do I have to be an employee, or you have also got a separate?
We actually hire students right out of high school after their plus 2. And then we put them through a 1-year program, and we pay them a stipend during that. We reverse the flow. They don't pay us tuition. We actually pay them a stipend. That also creates a kind of a strong feeling to succeed because they are getting paid and they need to succeed in this. And they take their thing seriously. And we give them challenging assignments of actual hands-on work in terms of what, like build a game, build this website, build this kind of things, assignments. So they figure out steadily. And that's how they learn. And it has been very successful. This year, we have probably taken in about 250 students or so. This COVID, again, we had to go online for all this. So we cope with this. Actually, one of the minor difficulties we faced is so many of your students come from such background where they don't have broadband connectivity at all.
Correct.
And so we had to get the modems, all that, and figure out all the logistics of how to do this remote.
Okay. And with COVID, do you, you were already an advocate for this push to declutter urban areas and move jobs back to the village. With COVID, do you see that? Do you see this as a temporary change, or you see it accelerating? Do you see Silicon Valley, for example, saying, "Hey, I'm not going to get this guy in Silicon Valley. I'm going to hire him in XYZ village in India, and he's going to work out of there." Do you see a lot of that happening?
What people say during the pandemic may not be the same thing they say after that, right? So you cannot actually completely, because after this, there will be a reversal of some of these. So I don't look at it that way, but I look at it as take the cost pressures I mentioned in terms of the infrastructure pressure, the real estate prices, all of those are real. In the Indian context, the congestion, the urban woes, and then as our earlier speaker, Mr. Pai said, they come to a big city and then have to live in a slum and get exploited. All of that is true, actually. So it is very vital that businesses move to smaller towns, rural areas. That is vital. And for just the good of the business, good of society, good for the workers, good for everyone. That is important. And would this happen? What this COVID is going to give the push? I do believe that a lot of companies are rethinking their location, geographic plans right now. The only thing is, when people think very short term, for example, if you are very exit focused and you want to exit within the next year or 2 years, you don't have long term focus. And a rural area, you need a long term focus in order to succeed. And that is and a hyper financialized economy. This is a typical problem for VC companies too, right? You have to provide an exit in 8 or 10 years, and you have only a clock is ticking on you. And when your clock is ticking on you and the gun to your head, you cannot think long term. That is the problem. You cannot afford to think long term. That is the problem.
Yeah, the decisions are very suboptimal, because there's always there's a deadline, which is
a lot of short-term optimization. They'll call it optimal, but that's optimal in the short term.
and it's artificial. The deadline is artificial. So then, in that sense, it's even worse. The optimizations all actually really worse. It's not timed to the business side. No, I think it's been a pleasure. I think we're at 5:30 right now. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I think some of my takeaways were, I really like your thinking around how to think about wealth more holistically. Just in terms of it is just not financial wealth, which is what most people, at least migrating. I live in Bombay, and most of the folks I interview, that is the main yardstick of success. That okay, how much money are you going to pay me, and that's what drives them, right? So, and how do you really change that perception? Uh, and really for entrepreneurs who are successful, I mean, your thought around how do I allocate capital so that there are enough long-term initiatives that are serving society at a large. I think those are one or two takeaways for me. It's been a pleasure, Sridhar, talking to you. I know we have time. There's someone else waiting. Sahil, I'll hand this back to you.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sridharji. Your thoughts, your tweets have been always very thought-provoking, and it was great to catch you live here. Thank you so much, Anuragji. It was very interesting to see two successful tech entrepreneurs conversing and creating a lot of ideas out of this packed session. So we had a great combination of speakers today, from technology and entrepreneurship to history and philosophy to modern economics, institution building, and nation building. That brings us to the end of the first day of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Summit. And we thank our audience for tuning in. See you again tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.